Beer, brats, and baseball. St. Louis's German heritage comes to life. That's next on City Corner. I'm Steve Potter, and welcome to City Corner. A new book highlights the important role that Germans had in the history of St. Louis. Beer, brats, and baseball. St. Louis Germans is the book, and the author, Jim Merkel, joins us now. Hi, Jim. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
This is your second book, Jim. You were actually here a couple of years ago, at the most, I guess. You wrote a book about the South Side, St. Louis's South Side.
Yes. Hoosiers and Scrubby Dutch, St. Louis's South Side.
And, of course, Scrubby Dutch is another reference to Germans, too.
Right. And it was, I really enjoyed it because I covered that area for the Suburban Journals, and I lived there. But I really enjoyed doing this book because it has to do with my own heritage.
Right. Before we get to that, would you share with us the dedication, because I think it really pulls it all together, the dedication in your book, Beer, Brats, and Baseball. Just read that for us.
Sure. I start with a favorite scripture about immigrants. By faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went. Hebrews 11:8. From Baden, Bavaria, and Saxony they came, 5 from a village of 100, 50 from a town of 1,000. They were haters of injustice, misfits in their own land, unwilling to settle for the lives of their fellows, anxious for a better world far away. They changed their new land, and it changed them. To all the Germans who enriched my hometown, to each of the huddled masses from every land who blessed our shore, I dedicate the pages to come.
You know, St. Louis really has been a melting pot over the years, and Germans played an important role in that. And I kind of identify with it. Like you, I'm a 5th generation on my mother's side, German St. Louisan. And I always heard when I was growing up, Jim, it was Saxony migration was the term I remember hearing.
Right. That was from the people who came over. They were unsatisfied. They were Lutherans who were unsatisfied with the religion over there, and they came over here. That was in the late 1830s. My great-great-grandfather, Louis Charles Merkel.
We have a picture of him. Let's
Sure.
take a look at that. Go ahead.
Okay. He came over in 1858. He'd actually come over as kind of a political, to get away from the politics after a failed revolution in 1848. He worked in St. Louis. He worked in New York, got married, had a couple of kids, and came out here in 1858 and started a piano factory. And there's one of the pianos that he made. And my brother, Louis Charles Merkel III, is 5th generation piano tuner. So the business has stayed in. I guess I was the black sheep because I didn't stay in the business.
Yeah, you became a journalist.
Oh my God.
What happened there?
Oh, I don't know. Some people don't turn out right.
So was it more complicated? You talk about coming over for political reasons. Were there a lot of reasons Germans came over?
Well, there was, when Germans came over in the 40s and 50s, it was still within memories of when Napoleon had decimated the place in the first and second generation decades of the 1800s. There was a lot of poverty. There were a whole bunch of little tiny mini-states, but there was also a lot of political unrest.
I know from my family's history, a lot of them had some businesses. So was it established Germans that came over? Because it seems like a lot of them, and maybe this is a misconception on my part, a lot of them seemed to be business owners.
A lot of them were business owners, but a lot of them were poor. A lot of them came over by whole villages. Interestingly, Columbia, Illinois, there was a community named Gaydern that came over en masse to the Columbia, Illinois area.
Really?
You're right.
That's interesting. Well, your book is Beer, Brats, and Baseball, and it's full of interesting old images and pictures and things. And let's take a look at this first one. Tell me about Camp Jackson.
Camp Jackson. At Camp Jackson, which was around Olive and Grand, basically Germans saved Missouri for the Union. Right after Fort Sumter, which was like April 12th to the 14th April 12th to the 14th, 1861, thousands of them signed up en masse to be volunteers. There was and of course Claiborne Jackson, who was the Confederate-leaning governor of Missouri. He had a militia camp called Camp Jackson, again at Olive and Grand, and basically thousands of Union volunteers, 80% of whom were Germans, marched out and surrounded this and forced them to surrender. And this was basically the end of any chance that the Missouri would fall to the Confederacy.
Olive and Grand's right around where the Fox Theater is
Right.
now. Yeah. So Germans were big supporters of the Union.
Oh, sure.
When they got here.
They were haters. Like I said, they were haters of injustice. Many of them had fought in 1848 and had come over, and this was a chance for them to fight again. And they hated slavery.
Let's take a look at another picture from the book, and this is a gentleman by the name of Martin Stephan.
Martin Stephan. He was part of that Saxon migration. He was a minister who hated the mishmash of Lutheranism. He was actually calling for an old-time religion of Lutheranism, going back to the original. And he gathered a group of about 750 Lutherans and came over here in the end of 1838, beginning of 1839. Unfortunately, when they arrived and they settled, a large group of them settled south of St. Louis along the Mississippi. There were many people who were concerned that he was living high, and then there was 2 or 3 women who confessed to having dalliances to him, and basically this group got so mad at him that they threw him out. They forced him to get on a boat across the Mississippi River, and he eventually formed his own Lutheran church there. He was buried with honors, and the group of settlers he brought over was largely responsible for the beginning of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. Mm-hmm. And interestingly, the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod is very conservative even to this day.
Yes, sir.
And of course, on the other hand, you have another group that came over were the evangelicals, who are basically a group of a branch today of the United Church of Christ, and they formed a union in 1840 right here down in Melville.
Yeah. I used to hear a lot about the Missouri Synod. My family was involved in that, and my mother's mother was born in 1891, so I grew up with her, and I wish I'd written down all the stories she told me about the family and the Germans moving over here and why.
You never do.
No, I never wrote them down. I should have, though. What about German mayors? And we have an image here. So the Germans became politically active?
Oh, yeah, there were many of them. In fact, I said in my book there were 8 German mayors. There were actually 10 German mayors, and from the 1890s to the 50s, there were like 40 of the 56 years there were German mayors. And the guy over on the far left is Mayor William D. Becker on August 1, 1943, preparing to go up into a glider, a military glider, and the other people also went with him. And all 10 people, including Becker, died when the glider crashed. And so 10,000 people watched, including his wife. And of course, there was others. There was Mayor Keel, and then there was also Mayor Bernie Dickman, who started things going on the Jefferson National Expansion Memorial.
And of course, I guess the last mayor with the German heritage would have been Vince Schamel, I guess.
Vince Schamel, who was, we even know about him today with all of his gardens. So, and that right there is Mayor Dickman. No, I mean, I'm sorry, that one is Mayor Dickman, the other one was Mayor Keel. And Mayor Dickman, interestingly, when it looked like he wouldn't get the money for the Jefferson National Expansion Memorial on a technicality, he was a Democrat, but he said he let it be known that he would campaign for Roosevelt's opponent in '36 if he didn't get the money, and he got the money.
Were all the Germans in St. Louis united, like in one big group, or were there a lot of factions and infighting?
Yeah, I think there were factions. At the beginning, very early, there were Democrats, but of course, with the Civil War, there were more Republicans. But as you can see, there were some Democratic mayors and some Republicans. Of course, I think as it went on, people didn't associate themselves as Germans. So
when did St. Louis have the highest percentage of German population? About what time?
I think it would have been around 1850. Of course, first generation. I think even now, the highest in 2000, the highest ethnic group by nationality in the United States was German. And it's unclear now whether that continues that because of the rise in Hispanics, but it still is a very large group, and it's even larger in Missouri.
You made a point, I was talking to you before we started taping, and you said how a lot of people don't consider Germans an ethnic group, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
Because they are.
Oh, absolutely. They're an ethnic group. I think it's because maybe we're boring, and like you look and you think Irish is more fun, and Polish, we know, and then Mexicans and Hispanics. There's, you go to the parties, but Germans, well, but we are, and we've got a great heritage.
We've got Oktoberfest, I guess.
Oh, we got Oktoberfest.
Hang on to that. Jim Merkel has written a new book about the German heritage in St. Louis, beer, bratwurst, and baseball, St. Louis Germans, and we'll talk to him more after this break.
In times of peace and times of war, in times of joy and times of pain, we need them, they need us, and we need you, the USO, until everyone comes home.
There's a monster in the kitchen.
Keep innocent things from triggering an asthma attack. Learn how to stop their asthma attacks at noattacks.org.
Monsters can be anywhere.
Did you buy the flashlight and the batteries?
Yes.
Did you make sure we're not missing anything in the first aid kit?
Yep.
Did you go through the plan with the kids again?
Yes.
The more you prepare today, the more you'll be able to reduce the devastating effects of a tornado, an earthquake, a power outage, or any other disaster. Get a kit, make a plan, be informed. Visit ready.gov.
Traditional light bulbs actually generate 9 times more heat than light. Let's switch to Energy Star light bulbs and stop burning through cash. Saving energy saves you money.
Since I got adopted, I've learned a lot about these humans.
I know. I mean, check out these two. It's Flirt City over here. I think she's getting his number.
Nice.
Your human's got some sweet moves.
Takes after his dog.
Hey, St. Louis, I'm Cora Kay. Keep it right here on STL TV.
The average text takes your eyes off the road for nearly 5 seconds. Stop the texts. Stop the wrecks. Visit us at stoptextstoprex.org.
Welcome back to City Corner. Beer, Brats, and Baseball, St. Louis Germans is a new book that details the importance of German heritage in the city of St. Louis. Jim Merkel is the author of the book, and he joins us now. And Jim, we were talking earlier, you're a journalist by trade and
Right.
you, for the suburban journals, and you cover Granite City. The reason I bring that up was it wasn't just St. Louis. Germans settled in areas around, like Washington, Missouri, and Granite City was another.
Granite City was another. Actually, it was started by a German named Niedringhaus, who wanted to...
There's a road named after him.
Right, and he had they had a plant up in North St. Louis that made granite ware, which was just like a little coating of granite on cookingware, and he started the whole town of Granite City. He bought it, and it's still going. It's had its rough times, but it's really coming back, and it's a solid German community.
That's interesting. Let's take another look for another image of the book. Here's a guy, he was an early baseball player. And
Actually, he wasn't a baseball player. His name was, he was a baseball owner.
a baseball owner.
Chris Von der Rohe, it's amazing with the way people know baseball in St. Louis that more people don't know Chris Von der Rohe. He was a real character. He came over, he owned a bar near where a team called the Brown Stockings played, and afterwards he noticed all these people coming into his bar and grocery store for beer, and so he bought into the company and he became its president in 1881, and he had actually 4 championship teams in a row in the late 1880s. Real character, and people loved him until things kind of fell apart for him in the late 1890s. And here's something that was written by Arlie Latham, who was a former Browns third baseman. He was known for his pranks, and he said, like a player came rushing in and found Chris serenely counting his coins. "Did you hear that, Chris?" yelled the player. "Choss. Do you know what it was?" "Oh, I suppose that chuck-ass Latham made another error." "No, but he just hit a home run with 3 on and won the game for you." "I always said," remarked Chris that night, "that Latham was the best man I ever had in a bench." And of course, this team, after he left, it became the Perfectos for 1 year, and then in 1900 it became the Cardinals. Right. And so, but it's a shame that more people don't know about him.
I like your German accent, by the way. You know what that reminds me of, too? I mentioned my grandmother was born in 1891 in St. Louis. Her father was born in Germany, actually, and came over at a young age. But anyway, I remember my grandmother talking about going to German school. I guess it was grade school. Mm-hmm. So they had German schools up until a certain point here in St. Louis.
Oh, yes. There was a time when German was taught on an equal basis with English. And of course, what happened, and into this century, and even today, you have Germans religious services. So it's continued.
Let's take a look at another image from the book. This has something to do with reconnecting, I believe.
Right. Oops, no, that's not reconnecting. That's, well, unless we want to talk about...
You tell me.
That's reconnecting with the beer. That is the old, that's the Anheuser-Busch brewery. And of course, Adolphus Busch came over here. There were actually 3 Busch breweries. There was one, and because Adolphus Busch was part of a family of 22, and there was one Busch who started a brewery in Belleville, and then his little brother Adolphus came over, and he married the boss's daughter, the daughter of Mr. Anheuser, and then he started, with his help, Anheuser-Busch became a world leader, and then there was also a Busch brewery in Washington, Missouri, which was another Busch family member.
The rest is history.
The rest is history.
I think we have another Busch-related
Right.
shot.
That actually came from an ad that was put into for a German organization. So, but it's kind of funny. This Busch is for you.
Let's go to the next one.
Okay. That's Guy Golterman.
Now, we know Ed Golterman.
Ed
He's
Golterman.
a very well-known gentleman around town here.
Right. That is Ed Golterman's grandfather. And interestingly, Ed Golterman was fighting very hard for the Kiel Opera House, and Guy Golterman was a lawyer, and he helped get the Muni started, and he also worked with Mayor Kiel to get the Kiel Auditorium started. So it was kind of funny that Guy Golterman really looks up to this guy.
Yeah, we had Ed Golterman on this very program, I guess, last year or two, as they were working to re-get Kiel Opera House back open. And it's now the Peabody.
No, yeah.
Right? And it's quite a place. I've been in there. I bet that the process you used to research this book was a lot. In fact, I read somewhere in your book how many, I guess, libraries you visited or people you interviewed. It's quite an extensive process.
There was about 80 people I interviewed. Some of them were as short as a couple minutes. Some of them I just harassed throughout this whole process. And
harassed?
That's the best way I can think of it. Had about 220 different newspaper articles over the years, about a dozen libraries.
Well, I think, in fact, you did your research while this our central library downtown is about to reopen, I guess, at the end of the year.
Right.
But so they had moved some of the archives that you needed somewhere else, and
well,
did that make it more complicated for you?
Well, it was actually the Compton branch library that I had to go to, and basically the difference is I had to go and ask them. But they were very helpful, and I'll give kudos for all those librarians. I'll be glad when it opens again. But it was such a massive bibliography that we decided just to put it online so we could have more space for actual pieces. And if anybody's interested, the bibliographies that's stlouisgermans.com. That's my website.
stlouisgermans.com.
And that's basically my whole website.
Did you find people coming out of the woodwork? You know, we always talk about how St. Louis is a big city, but in many ways it seems like a small town, people knowing one another. So then when you just focus on a particular group like the Germans, did you cross paths with people that you were surprised to meet?
Oh yeah, all the time. I mean, there was one family in my church, the extended family called the Ayers, and the mother is involved in the Historical Society in Washington, and then there was her daughter, and then her son-in-law suggested the German house over on Lafayette and 44. Oh, all kinds of people. And the thing that is wonderful is, and the same thing as with Hoosiers and Scrubby Dutch, is it gets people to thinking. And people at signings will just tell me, start reminiscing. And that's why when I know we've got a great thing here.
It's a small town. My great-grandfather had a business, Saxony Mill, right around Choteau and Broadway. And I had a friend that I'd known for 3 or 4 years, we just discovered recently that his great-grandfather's brother had a business right next door, so we figured those two had to have known each other in the 1800s. So small world, you know.
Sure.
Let's look at a couple more images from the book, and that is beer, brats, and baseball.
Okay. Right. That's Irma Rombauer, who wrote The Joy of Cooking. It was actually out of kind of a tragedy. Her husband had committed suicide, and she started collecting recipes, and this developed into this book. She was she was related to Max Starkloff, who was the
disability guy.
Yeah. No, well, the disability guy was later, but there was an earlier one who, the doctor who really had some pretty draconian suggestions for keeping people apart during the flu epidemic of 1918, and so he was so there was kind of connections there, but she was, there's still, her relatives are still keeping it going.
Well, before we're out of time, and you talk about cooking, there are a few good German restaurants left in St. Louis, aren't there?
Well, yeah.
What do you like?
I guess the Feasting Fox is one.
The Loopkers, right?
Yeah, the Loopkers.
Marty Loopker.
Right, down in, the one down in Waterloo, actually outside of Waterloo. Mm-hmm. Rainbow Palace. And there's some others.
It seems like for the large German heritage we had, there aren't that many German restaurants around today.
There's not. So, well, we still can make some.
How about German newspapers?
German newspapers, yes. There was the Westlicke Post, which was around until 1938.
That late, really?
That late. Yeah. And so it was mainly because, people weren't reading the language, but it did get caught up in the controversy of, the Nazi controversy among Germans. The Nazis called them communists, but they just wanted to stay above the...
Well, let me suggest to people, if you're interested in the German heritage of St. Louis, if you're German or just know some, you'll be fascinated by the book. It's Beer, Brats, and Baseball, St. Louis Germans, by our guest today, Jim Merkel. And Jim, thank you so much for sharing
Thank you.
today. That's all the time we have for this edition of City Corner. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.